webinar for libraries, school districts, and other partners to hear guests share the details about models for fiber expansion in their local communities.
What's that?
I said, is it we're starting a library to all our businesses in town?
Maybe.
And the projects that you're going to hear about this morning will highlight partnerships that these guests have with other public entities, including private-public partnerships and using a variety of funds to allow for broadband expansion. And we really hope that the information that is shared will be useful to you and perhaps replicable in your local community. And so let's start with a few introductions. My name is Rachel Shevlin, and I am the E-Rate and Broadband Education Consultant for Schools in the Division of Libraries and Technology with the Department of Public Instruction. And before we move on, I'd like to invite my colleagues from DPI to also introduce themselves.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Kurt Kiefer. I'm the Assistant State Superintendent for the Division of Libraries and Technology at DPI. Glad you're all here.
Hello, and I'm Annette Smith, and I'm the Director for the Instructional Technology Services team, and I am excited for this conversation.
Hi, I'm Bill Herman. I'm a consultant for broadband and E-Rate in the area of libraries, and I commend Rachel for getting this all set up.
Just waiting a moment. I don't know if Bob is with us right now. Okay, so thank you, Kurt, Annette, and Bill. And now let's take a minute to meet our guest presenters and for a chance for them to briefly introduce themselves. And let's go in the order of the presentation. We'll start with DJ.
Good morning, I'm DJ Scullin. I'm the Director of Technology at the School District of Fort Atkinson. Glad to be here.
Thank you, DJ. Harlan?
Good morning. My name is Harlan Lusink. I'm the Director of Technology for the Northland Pines School District.
Thank you, Harlan. Mark?
Mark Zuber, the clerk in the town of Drummond in Eau Claire County, about 20 miles southwest of Eau Claire City.
Thank you, Mark. And Dennis and Mike?
I'm Mike Bubb. I'm on the Taylor County Board. I'm chairman of the Taylor County Broadband Committee and very excited to share our project.
And I'm Dennis Hinderlater, the technology engineer for the Medford School District, who's really a beneficiary of the Taylor County Broadband Initiative.
Thank you both. And Jaron?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jaron McCullum. I'm the State Broadband Director at the Public Service Commission of Wisconsin. I'd just like to thank our partners at DPI for inviting us to participate today. Looking forward to it.
Thank you, Jaron. And thank you again to all of our guest presenters today for taking your time to be here and to share your fiber expansion story with us. And to get started, I'm going to turn things over to Kurt.
Thanks very much, Rachel. And I just want to reiterate too my gratitude for all of the guests who are sharing. The whole point of this is to share stories so that you understand the kinds of possibilities that exist to solving this problem that you see on the screen right now. This can be an intimidating issue, and what we're trying to get across is if you look at others and you lean on others, you will see that it doesn't have to be intimidating, that you can actually solve this problem. There's some ways to solve it that we think are going to get shared that are really important. And that's and so I'm going to spend as little time on my slides and ask Rachel to click through them pretty fast. And these resources will be available to you, obviously, that you can look at later. But I really am anxious to get to the stories that are going to be told by our guests. So we've done a lot of work on trying to put together resources that you can leverage throughout the pandemic. And you can see the list there. Go ahead and click through. Thanks. So there's a bunch of resources that are available for families, and that's in partnership with our friends at the Public Service Commission, because they've done a bunch of those things. So we're just kind of passing a lot of information on through our website back to theirs. So, but they've been great partners in helping us reach families. And I know many of you have leveraged those resources too. Go ahead, next slide. So as we've looked at trying to address the problem, one of the things that we felt we needed to help with was trying to define the problem, right? Everybody knows that there's issues with the FCC maps. We needed to find alternative data sources. And so we leveraged our ability to gather data through the school districts and the libraries to do that. That data can be used for a lot of different reasons, and not the least of which, as you can see on here, is that it helps with trying to figure out how to solve a problem locally and how to get some resources behind that. So a bunch of reasons. We created dashboards. This is an internal dashboard that you can use as an authenticated user in a school district. Next slide. And we've also put some things on the public dashboard as well, so you can kind of follow along with those. Next slide. And then we also took the data and we tried to geospatially present it to you. So there are maps out there for all the data that you submitted through the WISE Data API to to DPI. That data is then turned into a map format as well. So that's out there as well. Then we worked with the Public Service Commission to pull together the maps of the ISPs with overlaid on district maps. So that's out there too. So if you're needing to look at which providers are available, you can take a peek at that. And then the other map we've got out there is not one we created, but rather we worked with Education Superhighway to do this. And under the data sharing agreements we have with school districts and with Education Superhighway, and the data sharing agreements we have with the providers, they're able to munge that data together into this interface where school districts can identify the addresses that they need to have served, and they can identify very specifically which providers are out there to serve them. So that's been a useful resource. We also then worked at the same time with CISA purchasing, right? And CISA purchasing is housed in CISA 2, for those of you who are familiar with the CISAs. But it's a statewide procurement arm for all CISAs, and all school districts can purchase off of it. So when this whole thing started, we reached out and said, hey, let's get some of the providers with their offers onto the CISA purchasing site, and they helped create this thing called the Digital Learning Bridge, where you can find internet offers, you can find hardware, you can find software, but all of those things are available. And speaking of the data, so we've got about 300 LEAs now reporting. So about 2/3 of the local education agencies are reporting data for about almost 2/5 of the students that are out there. And from the data, we're learning this. We're learning that still there are 24,000 kids that either don't have access because they don't have a provider or they can't afford it. They have another 13,000 kids where you are providing the access because of say a cellular LTE hotspot that you've made available to them. But even if they are connected, we ask that third question, does it work for you? And from that, you can see that 28,000 parents are still reporting that they can't stream video using their connection for learning. And to say that this is an evenly distributed problem is not accurate. It is very much uneven. And what I mean by that is some kids don't have as good of access as other kids. And this graph bears that out, whether it's race or ethnicity, special education status, English learner. We don't have economically disadvantaged, but I can guarantee you it wouldn't be evenly distributed for those folks either. And then when you break out performance, you can see that it isn't all provider technologies are not equal opportunity providers, right? I mean, there are limitations in terms of the technology and what it can deliver. And that's really clear on this graph, where you can see that if you have a fixed wireless connection, you're much more likely to have all parents say, yep, works for me. But 10 times that many will say, nope, it doesn't, if you have a cellular connection or other connection. The other piece of data that we've really hit really hard, and many of you have been really, really helpful in cross-promoting, is speed data. Because in addition to asking parents whether or not it works for them performance-wise, we can ask them that question, and we got that. Actually getting speed data does that too. And so we work with MLabs to leverage their tool set for this. They worked with us to create a dashboard. These dashboards are going to be turned into maps soon. We should be releasing those as well. And they're all oriented around school district boundaries, but they also have breakouts by other jurisdictions too: cities, counties, villages, municipalities, congressional districts, all that kind of stuff. So that's been helpful. So let's get to the most important part of this, which is hearing from the other folks. These are the points that you're going to hear. Build local partnerships. Create a shared vision for a project. Pool the resources that you are now obtaining, right? There's a big public investment right now. Money should no longer be the barrier to a fiber project in your area because of the investments. The return on investment, the long-term return on investment is acceptable when you make this a public infrastructure project. When you think of it that way, then you can accept these longer-term investments, but the additional resources that are coming really help to make fiber types of projects a reality. And then, of course, we've got some resources out there that you can look at if you do need some to kind of talk about what kind of funding is available. So I'll stop now. And Rachel, I'm going to hand this off to DJ unless you say otherwise.
Thank you.
Take it away, DJ.
All right, thanks.
DJ, do you know that we can't hear you? We see your slides, but we can't hear you.
All right, can you hear me?
Yep, there you go. Thank you.
So I'll just preface this with, I've never done a fiber build before. As Kurt says, it is awfully intimidating, but I mean, if I can do it, anybody can do it. So bottom line up front, we did a 3.5 mile self-provisioned fiber build connecting 4 of our schools in town. And we partnered with the city of Fort Atkinson, and we kind of created a community area network that we dubbed FASTER, or Fort Atkinson Shared Technical Resources. You can go to the next slide, please. So how we started is we just pulled up a map and just started drawing lines between our schools, and we saw that we were going to be going past the library, the police department, the fire department, city hall. So I reached out to the local city engineer and said, like, hey, do you want to get in on this project that we're thinking about doing? And they were like, sure, of course, fiber sounds good. We originally were going to use E-rate funds, but then we thought if we could get 2 or 3 or 4 partners in on this, we wouldn't have to utilize E-rate funds. If we could split like the whole cost of the project 4 ways, it might be cheaper and less restrictive, because the E-rate has some pretty stringent rules as to how you can utilize the stuff that they fund. But at the end of the day, it was just the city and the school district at the table. So we decided to post $470 for the build. So I reached out to Bill Herman at the DPI, and he put me in contact with someone from the education superhighway who offered us a template, RFP template for this build. It was really, really useful because it had like a lot of the USAC specific language in the template, and those are linked below that you're welcome to steal. So we posted the RFP, and I really only got 1 bid, and it was for like $500,000. And my E-rate consultant was like, no, that's way too expensive for this project. Start cold calling some local companies, some local construction companies. So I would look on the sides of the roads for those big orange spools of conduit and jot down the names of the companies that were laying them. And I just started calling them and did a few walkthroughs with these construction companies, and we ended up getting landing on a bid that cost $305,000 for the project. I highly recommend calling your local construction companies, and it blew my mind how the price difference was from the most expensive to the cheapest one. So we waited to get our funding commitment decision letter, which came in May of 2019. So we awarded the contract to the construction company, and then we put them in contact with the city, and they did side proposals. So the city got their own quotes to add handholds, to upsize the fiber counts, to keep it completely separate from the E-rate project. The most expensive part of these fiber builds is to get all the trucks in the area and that first shovel in the ground, but like adding additional handholds and upscaling the fiber counts, like that's cheap. Some might say, well, why would the city's footing most of the bill for this project? Like what's in it for them? Why are you basically, funding most of the project for the city? I'll tell you why. I'm a firm believer of what's good for the school district is good for the community, and what's good for the community is certainly good for the school district. But selfishly, I needed someone to maintain this fiber. I needed someone to get out there and locate it. Every time a tree stump needs to get ground out of the ground, you got to send someone out there and flag your fiber so it doesn't, a backhoe doesn't go through it. And I only got a department of 2 people, and we don't have time to do that. So the city, they're going to be in the area anyways, locating other assets in the ground like water lines and sewer and stuff. So we worked out a deal where they would sort of maintain it for us. I'd gotten some quotes from third-party companies to do it for us, like private line locators, and it was just way too expensive. So phase 1 of the project that completed summer of 2020, the city originally was going to expand their network down to the south side of town and hook up things like the water tower and the business park, but they didn't have access to any funding like we did. But then COVID hit, and then the CARES funds came out, and there was like 10 billion allocated from municipalities to beef up their internet infrastructure. So our city engineer jumped on that and started cutting purchase orders for construction to continue down to the south side of town. And that's going to finish up hopefully this summer. And we're likely going to partner with WIN to light up the city's internet. So the city will have a fiber internet connection from Wisconsin Independent Network. And what's nice about that is we use WISNet, which is E-rate funded. If WISNet goes down for whatever reason, we'll be able to fail over to the city's WIN connection, and we'll have some hoops to jump through because our WISNet connection is E-rate funded. We have to if the city were to fail over to our WISCNet connection, we'd have to like log what percentage of use they did so that we wouldn't get funding for it. It's all silly, and I hope they fix some of these rules in the E-rate rules that they're talking about right now. But there's some great mutual benefits to partner with your local community. And so now the city is going to have an internet connection to the water tower, which is the highest point in Fort Atkinson on the south side of town, and that affords us some opportunities for things like fixed wireless to reach some of the homes on the outskirts of town that don't have really any options. But it took a while. It took a lot of talking and planning and meeting. It was terribly intimidating at first, but I mean, just stick with it, and certainly worth it in the long run. And yeah, that's our story.
DJ, thank you so much for sharing that information with everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And as a reminder, if you have questions, you can post those in the chat, and Dr. Annette Smith is keeping track of those questions, and we'll have a Q&A here at the end. So let's turn things over to Harlan.
Yeah, thank you. Again, I'm Harlan Lusink. I'm Tech Director for the Northern Pines School District, and I put some information in here just so you would have a rough idea of kind of what our district looks like and kind of some of the challenges that we were trying to conquer with this project. So the Northern Pines School District takes up most of Vilas County. So that's roughly about 500 square miles. And within our district, we have 3 separate campuses. So we've got our main Eagle River campus, but then we also have 2 outlying elementary schools in St. Germain and Land O'Lakes. And before we did this project, we had 3 separate connections to all of those schools, and cost was a problem with that, having to maintain those connections cost-wise. And we also had to run VPN connections to network all of those 3 sites, which was not ideal. And we also, with the providers that were available to us up in this area, we had issues with reliability over at those outlying schools. So those were kind of some of the issues that we were trying to solve with doing this project. And we also had kind of a mind to the community. That's always something we talk about within our community, is that, yes, the school has needs, but we're also looking to our students, our businesses, because they have a deficit as far as their access to broadband internet as well. So we're always kind of thinking of, how can we come up with solutions for the school that also benefit the community. So over a number of years, and I'm glad in the original slides that you talked about developing relationships, because that's exactly what we did. We had multiple conversations with different providers over a number of years to develop relationships with our local providers. And out of that, we were able to start down a path with a provider called ChoiceTel. They're a local, they started as phone, and now they've been doing fiber to home, and really capitalizing on the public service grants, and they'd done some expansion into some of our communities, and they were already in the Land O'Lakes portion of our school district, but they didn't have any infrastructure out into Saint Germain, which, to make this all ideal, we needed connections between those different outlying buildings. So what we did with ChoiceTel is we came to an agreement on kind of what a structure of an agreement would look like. And they put in a grant application to build basically a 30-mile portion of fiber connection that would connect their current infrastructure that was in the city of Eagle River to the town of Saint Germain, terminating at the elementary school there. And what we also negotiated as part of that agreement is that the Land O'Lakes School District, even though they already had that build in place, that a lease of fiber to Land O'Lakes as well would also be part of that. And you can see from the last bullet point here that, as a portion of this project, we always were talking about, well, how are you going to service, can you get to these different businesses along the route? Can you get to these different homes along the route? And I'll kind of talk about that in just a second as well. You can go ahead to the next slide, please. So ChoiceTel put together the project, and they came to a total project cost of $250,000, and we ended up getting that public service grant in the amount of $150,000. And so the school district share, just in terms of the grant cost, was right around $100,000. But we were very fortunate to have developed another relationship with a local business person that is very passionate about broadband expansion and business development here in Vilas County. So we were able to get a very generous $20,000 donation towards this project. That was straight to the school district. That was not a portion of the grant at all. But what it did was it just helped me in going to our administration, going to our board, and being able to say, this is the cost of this. These are the long-term benefits. And so that contribution really helped kind of push us over the finish line as being able to sell the long-term benefit and cost breakdown of this project. So basically at the end of this, we were able to lease fiber off of this project between those different buildings. So we were able to drop our separate internet connections to both our Land O'Lakes and Saint Germain elementary schools. And we're also, over time, we've been able to cut equipment costs and things at those buildings because we're not having to maintain equipment to facilitate those VPN connections. And that's a 20-year lease on that fiber. Now, one of the visions that we had for this project when we started out is that, yes, the school district is going to be able to benefit from this, but also we want to see the community benefit as well. We want businesses to get better broadband access. We want our kids, in their homes, to see benefits to this as well. And we've actually seen that with the last round of PSC grants that came out, because basically now the town of Saint Germain has said, well, now that you have this infrastructure in our town, we want to partner with this as well. So the town of Saint Germain now has partnered with this same company to do another PSC partnership and grant. And they were awarded that grant to basically expand this fiber network now into the entire town of Saint Germain. So that really fit with the vision that we had, that yes, the school is improving our infrastructure and improving, the setup that we have, but also you are, setting the community up for expansion at a considerably lower cost, because now the infrastructure is in that community. And I'll just say, kind of just learning from our experiences, it was great with this project to be able to work with a local telco for this. We over the years we tried to reach out to some of the bigs that were in our area, and we're kind of unsuccessful in getting any traction with getting a project like this off the ground. And you'll see from the numbers that for 30 miles of fiber build, this came in a lot less than what we had traditionally been projecting as the cost of a fiber project like this. So going with somebody local helped to bring that cost down a lot. And just as far as the service now that we have, because now this local telco maintains the fiber, locates it, repairs it if something happens. Just being able to myself be able to get on my cell phone and call the owner of the company if an issue. A great thing is we have not had really any issues with it, but being able to ask questions and being able to kind of also be a facilitator for others in the community, it's been a great relationship for us. So yeah, that's kind of our experience.
Harlan, thank you so much for sharing that information for your work in up in Vilas County, and it's really interesting. Let's turn things over to Mark in the town of Drammen.
Good morning. First slide. In the event, there we go. If you take a look at this first slide, I just wanted to mention that the town of Drammen is located in the southwestern corner of Eau Claire County, which is the northern boundary of the driftless area. We're very, very hilly. So line of sight technology really doesn't work in our area. That is why we pursued the fiber project in the town of Drammen. Current speeds being provided by our current provider is 1 down and 0.2 up. Very hard for a lot of people to, when the students come back home after school, most internet drops at that point. We did choose the Board of Commissioners of Public Lands for a loan from the town. When we did this, the town had to come up with $600,000. And the reason we did that is that it would spread the cost of that loan out over 15 years, which would make the financial impact to our taxpayers a little less. This project is going to cover approximately 80% of our residents because the other 20% have already been covered by 24/7 telecom and by Tri-County Communications. Our cost is going to be approximately $70 per $100,000 worth of assessment. So an average property in our town is going to have to pay about $140 more a year in taxes for the next 15 years. Our largest taxpayer in our township is a large dairy farm. Their cost is going to be about $15,000. However, that organization is totally behind this project to get the fiber into our township. Next slide, please. If we take a look at trying to get a grant, you can see that there's a lot of money being involved here. This is almost a $2.9 million project that we are going to have. We are very fortunate that we did get the Public Service Commission grant that we applied for in December 2020. And if we take a look at Tri-County's communications contribution, Eau Claire Energy Cooperative, and we also got a grant from the Marshfield Clinic Health System. Next slide, please. If we take a look at the financial contributors, I've already mentioned most of those, but we also had Don Mowry, who is a retired professor of social work at the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire. And he is going to be doing a digital literacy course with this to allow his students to come into our town. And if people have questions on how to use the internet properly, these students would work with the residents there. We found that as a town, we started this project about 5 years ago. And we reached out to our current provider and they did not respond. So then we reached out to 24/7 Telecom and to Tri-County Communications. And basically we were turned down. Don Mowry is also the county supervisor for our area, and he started a broadband committee at the county level. And we brought back 24/7 Telecom and Tri-County to the broadband committee meetings and met with them. And it seemed that once we got county support for this project, those two organizations were more interested in teaming up with us. It's very important that you have financial commitment from the local entity that is going to do where the fiber is going to be put in, but you also have to have county support and you have to have other support also. I think that's the last question. Is that correct? Our last slide?
Yes, and Mark, thank you so much for going into the details and talking about the partnerships and how the financing was working. As a reminder for people, if you have questions for Mark or about this section of the presentation, please include them in the chat, and we will get to those at the end during the Q&A. So thank you, Mark.
There's one other thing,
go ahead,
Rachel.
Yes.
There's one other thing I want to mention, is that if you are applying for a Public Service Commission grant, you might want to take a look at telecommuter certification and broadband forward certification. It would definitely help with the grant process. Thank you and have a good day.
Thank you, Mark. And let's turn things over to Mike and Dennis in Taylor County.
Thank you, Rachel. When we started looking at this at about 2.5 years ago, Taylor County is very rural. We have 3 school districts, Medford, Gilman, and Rib Lake. And over 50% of Taylor County residents have little or no access to internet. So we're one of the worst counties in the state of Wisconsin for internet access, unfortunately. So we formed the committee. We looked at a lot of options. We reached out to Charter and TDS, and once again, they really didn't want to partner with us in any way. So as we researched other projects around the country, we found that building a middle mile network, which would allow us to have a network that ISP providers then could connect to. The thing we kept hearing is that it was too costly for people to build a network in such a rural county and then provide internet service to the homes. So the county board approved in the fall of 2020 a $9.5 million bond to go ahead and build this network. Taylor County is going to be connecting 31 combination of schools, county sites, city locations, townships, villages with our fiber, so that at least those will be connected initially, which will be beneficial to the cities, counties, and that. So if you go to the next slide, our network will consist of nearly 80 miles of fiber, and the goal is to have a combination of where there's enough homes, there'll be fiber to the home, and then there'll be fiber to towers to connect residents to the network with fixed wireless devices. We have areas of our county where there's only 4 customers per mile, and you can't lay fiber for 1 or 2 customers. So we identified early on that we're going to be a combination of fiber to the home and fixed wireless devices. And the Medford School District has already found with their E-rate and connecting to our network that their future costs project, it's going to reduce their data connection costs by about 50% by being part of our network. One of the things we found that last spring, when schools had to shut down, about 30% of our students' education stopped. They had Chromebooks, but they couldn't connect. They're either not served or severely underserved. And in all of our school districts, we had students that basically their education stopped last March. And so the county board really jumped on when they voted for the bond issue. It was a 17-0 vote, which surprised me that we would get all the county board supervisors to support it. So you can go to the next slide. I think there's one more. Yeah. So we did an RFP we had 4 different companies submit proposals for us, to build our network. We selected a company called Wainwright, and we signed a company with them. They're responsible to do the marketing of our network and to market it to additional service providers. They also have a plan to take things to our residents and to businesses. Part of our contract is that when they lay the fiber for our network, if a business is within 500 feet of the network, they actually get connected for free. The dark fiber, and they're laying like 432 strands of fiber, so there's a lot of fiber being laid, will be sold or leased to third parties, and we get a percentage of the income from that leasing of the fiber. And so the county will be using that to cover our portion of the maintenance costs and to eventually pay off part of our debt. The nice thing about it is Wainwright is responsible for all maintenance, all break and fix. If fiber has to be moved because of a road project, that's on them. So we're basically hands off as far as the maintenance of the network. Dennis, do you want to make some comments about how this is going to affect the Medford School District?
Sure. And we, as a district, were able to come on as a leaser of the network because we filed E-rate for our data connections. We have 6 different buildings within the district, and we need to connect them. And as a customer on this network, now our money, along with the E-rate money, is coming back into the project to help support and hopefully extend its capabilities. And we could get in much cheaper because we only had to build fiber to the backbone and not have to build the fiber to the whole to the end locations. We also previously, before this project got rolling, I did file and consider filing E-rate for the full project. I had bids and quotes from I enlisted Wisnet to help us out to try and determine what is it going to cost for us to do the project ourselves. But our providers within the city of Medford were good enough that they could provide us fiber that E-rate at that point couldn't justify to building our own. So between the telco and charter, they were able to provide us data connections, but it never extended outside of the school district. So our students, I had no way to serve them. So this county project really is what made it roll, and getting the county involved was, I think, the turning point for this whole project.
And I really think that one of the keys is that we did a survey of the residents, and we had worked with another company called Vantage Point, and they were shocked at the number of people that responded to the survey. And over 70% of the people said they had either poor or no internet service, and that they were looking to the county government to do something about it. And this company, Vantage Point, was shocked that residents wanted the county government to do something. And so I think that's why the county board got involved. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to get any grant money right now. A lot of the grant money, the way the grants are written, is that you have to have a internet service provider tends to get more of the money. So the money goes to for-profit companies. We're trying to work with the state legislature and the governor's office to get some of the future money could be allocated for other middle mile networks within the state, because for counties like ours, the infrastructure is what's really lacking right now. And so we think by building this, that the opportunities to get more service providers in Taylor County is going to be a reality. And we're already seeing that because they're contacting us. So we're very excited about the project. We want to get going very quickly, but I guess engineering takes time.
They did tell us we'd be connected by August, so.
Thank you so much, Mike, and thank you, Dennis. I really appreciate hearing that information, and look forward to some questions folks might have for you at the end here. Let's turn things over to Jaron.
Sure, thanks, Rachel. So I'm going to talk at a high level, well, maybe maybe a little bit more detailed about the state, the PSC Broadband Expansion Grant Program. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the federal funding opportunities that are coming forth. We're still waiting on guidance on a few of those, or almost most of those, but I'll talk about that as well. So the Broadband Expansion Grant Program has been in existence at the PSC for a number of years now, almost 7 or 8 years, I believe. And really, as has been spoken about, the purpose for the grant program is to encourage the deployment of advanced telecommunications capability in underserved areas of the state. And the reality is that broadband expansion is oftentimes expensive, oftentimes time consuming. And for those reasons, the grant program can really help internet service providers, local units of government, et cetera, find a path to return on investment to those areas of the state that are just challenging to serve or more costly to serve. So in terms of eligibility, there's kind of two, I don't want to call them phases, but 2 steps to being eligible to apply for the grant program. The first one being an eligible applicant. And an applicant for a grant submitted must be within any of the following categories, and this is from state statute. They have to either be an organization operated for profit or not for profit, including a cooperative, a telecommunications utility, or a city, village, town, or county that has established a legal partnership or joint venture arrangement with an otherwise qualified organization or telecommunications utility. And then kind of the other side of eligibility is being in an eligible area of the state or being in an eligible location. And for an area to be considered eligible for the grant, it must be considered underserved. And underserved is defined as an area served by fewer than 2 broadband service providers, where broadband service is defined as 25 megabits per second download and 3 megabits per second upload. And we have fielded a large quantity of applications over the years. So how those applications are primarily scored is based off of statutorily defined priority factors, and I've got them listed on the screen here. I'll quickly go through those being matching funds, public-private partnerships, existing broadband services in the proposed project area, the project impact, the scalability of the project, the economic impact of the project, and then also the degree to which a project would not delay service to adjacent areas. So another thing that I wanted to quickly hit on was just kind of some high-level stats. We actually, the PSC just awarded grants last month. So for fiscal year 2021, which is our most recent grant cycle, we had 124 applications come forth in December of 2020, and those applications were requesting $62 million. We ended up awarding $28.4 million to 58 projects. So you can kind of see the competitive nature of the grant program there. We had twice as much request, more than that actually, than we were able to actually fund. We had 49 fiber to the premise projects, 6 fixed wireless projects, 1 fiber middle mile project, and 2 cable projects. Those projects had a significant range in terms of size. I think the smallest grant was $40,000, and then the largest was $2.2 million. So a pretty big range in terms of the size of the grants that we were making. And then a quick note, like I said, we awarded $28.4 million, and then that leveraged $49.2 million of private, local matching funds to kind of help build out broadband infrastructure in those areas of the state that need it. So now I'm going to quickly touch on federal funding, and like I said, a lot of this is, some of it is still to be determined, and we're waiting on guidance, but I can kind of at a high level run through it. So folks may already be aware, but the emergency broadband benefit is a very timely update right now. We're expecting that program to launch very soon, and that program is coming out of the FCC and offers temporary discounts of up to $50 or $75 on tribal land off of eligible households' internet bills. I'd be happy to put a link in the chat if you're more information on that program, but it is a very exciting temporary program coming out of the FCC at the federal level. Another kind of big impact in terms of dollars potentially being allocated for broadband is coming out of the American Rescue Plan Act, the Coronavirus Capital Projects Fund, which is coming out of Treasury, $10 billion, and those dollars will be distributed to states, territories, and tribal governments to carry out critical capital projects directly enabling work, education, health monitoring, including remote options in response to the pandemic. The Emergency Connectivity Fund coming out of the FCC, $7.2 billion, and that is leveraging E-rate to reimburse schools and libraries for providing free broadband service and connected devices to students and patrons at their home. Next, there's been a lot of discussion that I've noticed about the state and local fiscal recovery funds, again, coming out of Treasury, $350 billion for the nation, and those will be distributed to municipalities, counties, tribes, territories, states, and the law makes clear that those funds can be used for local economic recovery purposes, including assistance to households, small businesses, nonprofits, hard-hit industries like tourism, travel, and hospitality, and then the kind of the kicker here is water, sewer, and broadband as well. So broadband infrastructure is specifically called out there. And then the last one I would quickly update on is the Homeowner Assistance Treasury Fund, again coming out of, Homeowner Assistance Fund coming out of Treasury, $10 billion, and that's Treasury will be making grants to states to administer programs like helping assisting homeowners with mortgage payments, utilities, insurance, and then also within that is internet service. So many of those we're still waiting on guidance for, expecting that I think in mid-May. So a bit stay tuned there, but happy to talk any more on any of those specifics and if there's interest. So thank you.
Thank you, Jaron, for that information on the PSC grants, as well as some of the different funding sources that are coming out. And now I'd like to go ahead and turn things over to Dr. Annette Smith.
So thank you all. There was quite a conversation happening in the chat, and I do want to share some of it so that it gets onto our recording for those who choose to come back and look at this later. Trina had asked Harland in Northland Pines what the distance of his fiber run was, which was 23.5 miles. Russell, you shared some information in the chat about the project. Do you want to maybe highlight that a little bit, please?
Sure. Thank you for the offer. I'm a consultant working with Mike and Dennis on the Taylor County project, and while the initial goal is to develop a middle mile network throughout the county, another thing, a secondary benefit to the county is connecting all of their decentralized facilities together. And so that could include a variety of highway department garages, remote offices. There's basically 4 population centers in Taylor County, in addition to Medford, which is the county seat. There's Rib Lake, Gilman, and Stetsonville, and in some of those towns there are county offices or highway departments. We're also connecting town halls that are along the routes, hoping that within those town halls maybe Wi-Fi hotspots are established. Also that those facilities could be used in the future for video teleconferencing sites, so maybe people don't have to travel as far. And the important thing with connecting those sites is the county is going to be eliminating a number of invoices that they get from outside providers. And it could be a mixture, it's a dedicated circuit and VPN topology right now, but the county is going to have a single consolidated fiber network connecting all of their sites. So there's no finger pointing when there's problems with the network. It's going to be higher speed. The costs that they're going to be saving that are now going to outside providers are going to be used to offset the operation or the maintenance costs that Mike alluded to. And it's a fixed maintenance cost for 20 years. So the county can very easily budget knowing that there's a not to exceed number on an annual basis as far as the maintenance for the network.
And I think that really speaks to not only partnerships, but how you can sell this to some partners, like the types of arguments you can make in terms of savings and connectivity and connection. So really, thank you for sharing that, Russell.
I have one other comment, and a couple of the other speakers have alluded to it already. You really need to turn over the rocks and find out who else might need broadband in your counties. Broadband doesn't necessarily mean just internet. And one of the applications that I'm personally passionate about, being a volunteer firefighter, is the public safety community. And right now there's a distribution of towers in Taylor County for public safety, and that's fire, EMS, law enforcement, including state patrol. And by connecting fiber to those towers, it creates a higher speed, more reliable connection than the microwave connections that are currently being used. You need to ask a lot of questions. I found out a lot by just contacting the county sheriff, and he sent me to the county's radio contractor, and I learned a whole bunch about what some of their needs and where the gaps are in their service, and we're hoping to address that as well.
Thank you. Next in the chat, Kurt had shared some information. People had asked for the links for the data and links for the PSC grants and several other links. Right now, you can find some of that information at dpi.wi.gov/broadband. We will add more information based on the questions in the chat and the types of things that have come up to that site, including we have a chart there. You'll find a link to a chart on the left that shows all the different funding options. Jaron brought up a couple of new ones that we don't have on the chart. We will be updating that chart, and we will continue to update that as we get more clarity on each of the funds and how they can be used. So that dpi.wi.gov/broadband site is really the spot where you'll want to go for all of this information. It is where Rachel will be putting the recording of this presentation and has been putting the other ones that she has been doing. And so again, we will make sure that there are links and access to all the different things that Kurt has shared in the chat. And I think that is my last question. Anyone else have anything that they want to get clarity around? Also, we have the contact information on the slides for each of the presenters so that you can follow up with them if you have questions specific to their work. So Rachel, back to you. Oh,
yeah, this is Mike Bubb. I just want to make a comment, and I don't know how this would work, but as more and more people are building these networks, I don't know if it would be a state responsibility or a DPI responsibility, but it would seem to be that there's going to be more and more of an opportunity to connect and share networks to help, to maybe reduce costs for other people. So I don't know how we do that, but it seems like as you look to the future, there's going to be options to connect more of these networks together and maybe have a statewide emergency network or something. But, I just saw that out there as boy, that would be great in the future type of comment.
Yeah, and there, Mike, this is Kurt, and I'll just chime in saying that there is obviously a FirstNet network, and but I will also say that in the task force conversations, the governor's task force conversations, Jaron, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but there's been attention paid to this notion of middle mile infrastructure, and I think that's where the interconnectivity of these county level kinds of networks comes in. We had a lovely presentation from Wynn, who is, one of those entities that helps to make some of those kinds of connections, but there are others out there too. But I think more and more, you're spot on. We have to be thinking about how to interconnect some of those things too. And some parts of the state are in worse shape than others. Let's put it that way. So good point. Thank you.
Well, and I would add to that Russell posted in the chat, make sure you don't build a fiber island, right? You do have to connect to the outside world. So to Mike's point, you got to make sure you're connecting to others.
Annette, can I just say a couple things in closing?
I think it's, yes, sure. I'm looking at Rachel. Yep.
Is that okay, Rachel?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, so I just want to emphasize that relationships, the partnerships, and the pooling of the resources. You have to, as Russell and others have all said, you've got to find your relationships out there, and that's the partnership stuff is with other public entities, but also non-public entities, right? They're private entities too, and there are local folks everywhere who want to help solve this problem. We have a once in a lifetime opportunity with the capital that's being invested now in some of these things. We have the grant program, but you could theoretically, and you've seen this even pre-grant and kinds of other fund sources like Taylor County was talking about. They didn't even necessarily leverage that. They use long-term investment vehicles that they have called bonding. But now that there is some of this kind of money becoming available, and it's going directly to local counties, municipalities, school districts, it is now the time to pool those resources around a collective vision to figure out how to solve this problem once and for all with the right partners. And those are all going to be up to you to kind of figure out how to do that. If we can do anything by giving you RFPs and contracts and documents and whatever that you can use to make it easier for you, if we can give you step-by-step playbooks on what to do, that's what we're going to try to do. And I know that the PSC is doing the same kind of thing too. So all I can say is take advantage of these resources that you have. Now is the time. It's probably never going to happen again, not in my lifetime, because I'm an older guy, but it's now's the time. The other thing I will say, and this has come up, and when you said island, Russell, it made me think of something else. So with these resources, and you heard this, right? There is an opportunity to have your interests met. Say you're a school district, right? If you want in a contract to set aside some subscriptions on this long-term lease or licensed kind of arrangement for some households that might need connectivity at your discretion, that's the kind of provision you might want to build in. Another one I just heard of, the folks up on Washington Island with their project, they're going to take the contribution from the school district and dedicate it toward deferring the connection fee for all students and staff. So that's a $300-400 connection fee. Well, they're going to avoid that by leveraging the school part of the investment in the project. So those are examples of things that you can do as you build out your project locally too, is think about those creative ways to make sure your needs are getting met. So those are just a few things I wanted to get off my chest. I really want to thank also all the people who participated today. We just got to keep telling these stories because there's lots of them to tell, believe it or not. And it's not very hard to do if you kind of know what you got to do. But it is a local kind of thing. So I really appreciate the stories that are coming from the communities out there. So thank you very, very much. I'll turn this back over to you, Annette or Rachel. Thanks.
Thank you, and thank you for those closing comments, Kurt. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. This will be posted, like Dr. Annette Smith said, on our dpi.wi.gov/broadband website. The slideshow as well as the recording will be posted, and we'll get other links to resources that were mentioned in the chat as well. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.